Welcome to Community Roundtable. I'm Nick Burns from the Salt Lake Community College Division of Communication and Performing Arts, and I'm your host as we explore topics of special interest and special concern to the residents of the cities and also the unincorporated areas of Salt Lake County. These are topics that we feel are equally important to the general public throughout all the entire state of Utah. And today on Community Roundtable, we continue our series of special episodes featuring one-on-one conversations with officials in our local and state government. Our guest at the table today has served with both Representative Bishop and Representative Chaffetz. He currently works as the Chief of Staff for Utah Governor Gary Herbert. Our topics for the episode today, we'll talk about education in Utah, we'll talk about the Governor's Prosperity 2020 agenda, and we'll talk about what that job actually is, Chief of Staff, and how does one prepare for a life in politics. Justin Harding, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to join you. Great privilege and honor to be here.
Well, thank you. And I know you've been touring the campus today, and I want to get into that, but as a place to start, most everybody knows Chief of Staff from, Josh and the West Wing. So tell me what it really is. What is it you do?
That's a great question. Thank you, Nick. There are some similarities between what I've done in both the House of Representatives as well as what I currently do for Governor Gary Herbert. My primary role as the Chief of Staff is to oversee the Governor's executive office, to direct the work of his cabinet, and in an indirect way to help oversee and direct the work of all of our 21,000 plus state employees. And so it's a pretty weighty responsibility. From time to time, there are matters that come to our attention that require immediate response. Some days the Chief of Staff might be focused on a personnel issue. Another day he might be focused on building a relationship with legislators. Another day he or she might be focused, in my case he, might be focused on policy or political discussions with key stakeholders within the governor's circle of friends. And so it's a wide range of responsibilities that I have here in the governor's office. And there's really no aspect of the executive branch of the government within the state government upon which my responsibilities don't touch or have some influence.
So like governor's right-hand, left-hand guy or gal?
If you want to think of it that way.
Are you like the gatekeeper? Nobody gets to his office but through you?
I don't think of myself as a gatekeeper. I think of myself as an enabler.
Okay.
How can I help ensure that those people who need access to the governor have access to him? And how is that access going to help him advance an agenda on behalf of the state? And so I work with our scheduling team and our policy staff to ensure that the governor, as he likes to say, he's inclusive in process, he's collaborative in approach, and he's moderate in tone.
So it wouldn't be so much keeping people out of his office as figuring out who to let in.
Who the right people are to be in there to speak with him.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yet you don't have to go do any fundraising or any of that stuff.
The way we've divided the responsibilities is I focus primarily upon the official side of the equation.
So what's the skill set for a job like this? I mean, interpersonal communication, obviously, but what does one study to get to a place like where you are?
That's a fair question. I wouldn't say that it's something that you could go to college and say, I want to study to be a chief of staff.
Yeah.
The people that I know who have held this position in the governor's office, as well as former colleagues during my time of service in the U.S. House of Representatives, we come with a variety of backgrounds. Some of us have backgrounds in business, some have backgrounds in law. Some have been political animals their whole lives, and that's what they've always wanted to be, is to be a chief of staff. And so I graduated from Southern Utah University in 2000. I was employed there in the local business community, working for a family member in one of their businesses, and was serendipitously, given the opportunity to work for members of Utah's congressional delegation, and from those experiences, sort of a cumulative of experience in Washington, D.C. sort of set me on the course that I'm on now.
So this wasn't, when I grow up, I want to be a chief of staff or I want to be a politician?
No, certainly that was not my life story.
Is your job essentially a strategic communication, a public relations kind of job?
There's a little bit of that.
Okay.
We have a communications director within the office, but the chief of staff would be responsible for setting the tone, as well as determining what our overall communications, policy, political objectives might be, and ensuring that the team is coalesced around those and is moving forward in a unified way in accomplishing the governor's objectives.
So obviously, I mean, so Governor Herbert's the leader.
He's
right?
the leader.
I mean, he's the elected official.
He and the lieutenant governor are the elected officials, and so I think of myself as sort of the third man in the executive branch of government.
Yeah.
You have the governor and the lieutenant governor, who are both constitutional officers, and then the chief of staff, who works closely with the governor and directs the work of the executive office.
So, but Governor Herbert, in describing you, has used words like good leader and also talked about ability to manage, which is what you're describing now. So,
sure.
I mean, you seem to have to be able to balance when to manage and when you have to be out front and lead.
That's right.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of that, and if I need to gently nudge, I will. If we need to. If we just need to ensure that everybody's getting along well and doing good work, then we do that as well. And fortunately, the governor has a very good team in place, both in his executive office as well as his cabinet. And that has been one thing that I have been very impressed with coming into state government, is just the number of exceptionally bright and talented and competent people are currently serving in public service here in the state.
So you mentioned the state here, and you used to work for Representative Bishop, you were chief of staff for Representative Chaffetz, right, in D.C.?
Correct.
Tell me about that. I mean, I would think Washington, D.C. and up on the Hill here would be just kind of different.
They are a little bit different in that, when I was in Washington, D.C., I was working in the legislative branch. And the legislative branch has a very different function in the sense that, the role of the legislative is to enact law that is then carried out by the executive branch. Utah being a small state and being, people that are within that sphere of influence, well, we all tend to know each other very well. Over a 14-year period, we get to work on many issues because there's so much cross-fertilization that takes place. And so coming into the governor's office, I wouldn't describe it as being a whole lot different, but just uniquely the same. It's my time in the House, the work of the House sort of ebbs and flows with the times that Congress is in session and when it's out of session. Of course, there's those even then you can still be very busy. But one thing that I've appreciated about service in the state is that there's just this constancy. It's just we're just always churning at 110 miles an hour. It's a very busy office and a lot of fun.
So, not to overly put you on the spot, but was it smart of the governor to hire someone who has national connections and national experience for chief of staff here locally?
That was a decision that the governor obviously made and felt that would be in his best interest. I like to think that it's a symbiotic relationship in that I bring my many years of experience of working in the national legislature and having ties to people in D.C. as well as working with business and industry representatives here in the state, and working with the governor, who obviously holds the office and the keys here in the state. And so we work together in a very collaborative way.
Okay. When we come back, we need to take a break. When we come back, I want to drill down a little bit maybe into some of the governor's policies a bit more closely.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. This is Community Roundtable. Keep it tuned. We'll be right back. We're talking with Justin Harding, who is Chief of Staff for Utah Governor Gary Herbert. We are back on Community Roundtable, talking today with Justin Harding, Chief of Staff for Utah Governor Gary Herbert. So you mentioned, this experience in D.C. You mentioned the skill set needed to work with, the people here in the state. The feeling I get is there's a lot of people elected to the Congress, in federal government who don't like the federal government much. There's the sagebrush rebellion kind of revisited. But I don't catch such a vibe that people are so down on the state government. So what's your take on that we have all this animosity directed to Washington, it seems like. And to me, maybe I'm naive, but that has to be more than just a Democrat in the Oval Office.
I think that it's deeper than that. I don't know that people are hard partisans all the time. I believe that for me, what it boils down to, and one of the attractions in coming back to work for Governor Herbert and be a part of his administration, was the highly functional nature of state government, particularly executive government, where you have an executive who's been very effective in leading the state over the course of the last 4+ years, and has been able to accomplish some wonderful things on behalf of the state and its citizens. When he came into office at the time that Governor Huntsman left to become ambassador to China, the unemployment in the state was well in excess of 8%. Utah now has a 3.5% unemployment rate. Our growth is 3.7%, and so we're one of the fastest growing economies here in the United States. Utah has a long list of accolades, as long as my arm, in terms of, we're 1, 2, or 3 in almost every economic indicator. Forbes and a lot of different national publications have recognized the good things that are going on here in the Beehive State. And so for me, that was an incentive to come back and to be a part of, some really exciting things that are happening here in the state, to take the lessons that I'd learned working at the national level and to apply those here at the state level, and to see if we couldn't spur Utah onto even greater heights. There's no question that there is a great level of dysfunctionality in Washington, D.C., and some of that is partisan, some of that is just the vastness and the size and the scale and the scope of the federal government. It really has grown so large that it becomes difficult and cumbersome to manage. It's not as nimble as it could be, and that's what's attractive about state government, is it is much more nimble.
Good point. I mean, it seems like if there's a flood, it's the governor who's there right away, or the mayor, right? You're much more hands-on.
Much more hands-on at the state and local level.
Sometimes I wonder, though, that dysfunction at the federal level, it's easy to say that there's gridlock and nothing gets done, but yet there are a lot of people who are getting exactly what they want through that gridlock. So for those people, it's not dysfunctional at all.
Well, there are key government programs that continue to function. There a large amount of the spending that takes place at the federal level is mandatory spending, and so when we're talking about Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and other key government programs, those programs, they continue to chug along as they were designed. But in some cases, because there's a lack of will on the part of the legislative branch, we have in excess of $60 trillion in unfunded mandates because we haven't made changes to some of those programs. And so we have discretionary and mandatory spending. The discretionary side of the pie is about 1/3 of the overall spending. Mm-hmm. And if we continue to spend at our current trajectory, eventually mandatory spending will swallow up discretionary. Now, discretionary is for things like defense and roads, transportation, key infrastructure type programs, where the federal government does have a role to be involved in that space as well.
I mean, if I were you, I'd certainly want to bail out of the federal government just over the ineptitude of trying to build a new bridge, right? But
there were a few bridges to nowhere. Fortunately, there were none of those in Utah.
Yeah, exactly, and none of them collapsing here either for now. But you dropped a word there that I'm not going to let go by, and that's Medicaid.
Sure.
So where are we at here, do you think, in terms of the governor's proposal for Medicaid expansion? And I presume you're the one who'll have to kind of carry that to the legislature?
We're working as a team, the governor and I and the lieutenant governor, and then we have Dr. Dave Patton, who's the director of the Utah State Department of Health, and some other very capable senior staff who are working on behalf of this. And this week, the third week of October of 2014, on Thursday, the governor will be announcing, as part of his media coverage, some significant breakthroughs with the legislature, as well as a timeline by which we hope to accomplish that alternative to Medicaid expansion. So we're getting there. I can't reveal details at this point, but we are sorry about that. But we are getting close to the finish line, closer than we've been all year long.
So for those folks in that area that don't have coverage, are we looking at something to break during the legislative session or some additional special session?
That would be our hope, is that we address this, if not in a special legislative session this year, and really time is working against us at this point, because we've had to work out the agreement with the administration in Washington, D.C., the Obama administration. We have to give our own legislature time to conduct their own due diligence and consider the agreement that the governor has reached with the Obama administration. And so, if we can get all the way across the finish line this calendar year, we will do that, but it's looking more and more likely that it'll be something that we'll consider as part of a general session item in the legislative session of 2015.
Reading between the lines a little bit, there seems to be some optimism there that the legislature will be on board with this?
That's what we hope to announce on Thursday, is that we've made some breakthroughs with the legislature, and we've been able to keep both the letter and the spirit of the program that the governor has outlined and proposed to the administration, and make a few tweaks to it that make it very Utah-centric and unique to the state, but also do so in a way that the legislature will feel will be a responsible expansion of a new program here in the state.
Okay. All right. So we'll wait. We'll wait. Here you are at Salt Lake Community College, and you've been touring around. What have you been seeing?
Well, today I had the good fortune of spending some time with your new president, President Hufflin, remarkable woman. She's really seems to have hit her stride and is doing great things on behalf of the college. I was impressed with the breadth of Salt Lake Community College's number of campuses and the number of students that you serve here in the state. You're really doing some great things. Following our meeting with the college president, I was able to meet with the student leaders on the executive council, and that was really exciting. I'm farther removed from that setting than I like to think, but at my heart, I'm still a student, and it was really fun to be with them.
So there's a message that so many young people today are I want to say actually disassociated from politics. Mm-hmm. What was your time with students like?
It was very positive. It was fun to be in there. Coming from Virginia, my family and I have had a very rich experience in terms of the economic and cultural and religious and ethnic diversity of the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. And the executive council here at Salt Lake Community College was a very diverse group of students, and that was fun to be with them and to see the various backgrounds and life experiences that they're representing. And they're all coming through here and accomplishing great things, and they'll move on and do even greater things with their own lives.
I mean, that's the genius of Salt Lake Community College, is we have the diversity that I think no other institution in the state has.
Yeah.
I mean, 60,000 students from all walks of life doing all kinds of things, from healthcare to fixing cars. I mean, we do it all here. This is Community Roundtable. We're going to take a break. We'll be back, talk some more with Justin Harding. I want to get some more into education and look at the economic development side of that. So keep it tuned. We'll be right back with more Community Roundtable. We are back on Community Roundtable. Our guest, Justin Harding, Chief of Staff for Utah Governor Gary Herbert. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM.
STEM.
Right? Everybody's obsessed about STEM. You studied political science and what, small business?
Small business, yes.
So what do you tell students about, do you tell students don't do that?
In our earlier meeting with the Executive Council, I shared with them an experience that I had several years ago. We were having dinner with some close friends, and he asked me, he said, Justin, where did you go to school? And so I told him, and he says, well, what did you study? And I told him that I graduated in political science, and then he said, well, what are you doing now professionally? And so I told him at the time I was working for Congressman Chaffetz as his Chief of Staff, and he said, you're the only person I've ever met who actually has a real job in political science. And so I look at political science as more of a means to an end as opposed to a terminal degree. For me, it became, my final stop due more to circumstances than anything else. But for those that really want to be productive, contributing members of society, go on and get that graduate degree or, completed, there's nothing wrong with the social sciences or political sciences. Those are important foundational studies. But do something that will enable you to not be the exception like me, but to actually have an opportunity to contribute to society in meaningful and productive ways.
Okay.
So.
I mean, Forbes just recently ran an article that was headlined, "A liberal arts education is not a mistake."
No, I agree that it is not.
Yeah.
And I know many people who have liberal arts backgrounds, and I think that way of thinking and analysis and having that deep literary history and study is probably a very good form of study.
Actually, it's not to be too far on a tangent, but I actually read that undergraduates who studied classics scored higher on the exam to get into law school than pre-law students. So well-rounded.
I would not dispute that, and that's why, if the First Lady of Utah were here, Mrs. Herbert, she would say, and the governor would say as well, not STEM but STEAM. We need the A in there for arts. And certainly in the academic upbringing with my own children, we have invested a significant amount of resources into them and giving them private music lessons, violin and piano, feeling like they need that arts background to help really round out their other academic studies.
I mean, truly creative people use both sides of the brain. Forget this right-left stuff. So what do you do as Chief of Staff? What do you do when you hear people in the legislature talking about degrees to nowhere, wanting to charge students extra money if they don't take certain classes? I mean, to us and academics like me, that's crazy makings.
Those are fair questions. I think that we want to be careful to give students guidance, to help them see that as they begin down a degree path, to understand what the career opportunities might be for that particular career or for that particular degree, to see what their earning potential might be, what the jobs are in that field, and really let them, at the end of the day, it's about personal liberty, freedom, the ability to self-direct, and that's one of the 4 foundations or pillars of Governor Herbert's administration, is self-determination. And so I don't know that we want to get to a point to where we start telling people, based upon this aptitude test, you're going to be a mechanical engineer and you cannot study or do anything else. And if you choose to take classes over here in this college, then we're going to charge you double. I don't think that's a policy that I or the governor would endorse.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because, what's wrong with a philosophy degree, right? I mean, we need philosophers too. But like you say, one might want to think and plan.
Sure, and that's where academic advisement comes into play, was to ensure that we're letting those students, really see what the career opportunities might be in that field. And maybe, for them, a degree in philosophy may not be the end. It might be a means to an end where they want to go on and to get a degree in something else.
Or they want to sell shoes, but they just want a degree in philosophy.
That's right.
Who knows? So what would the governor say about the purpose of education isn't only a job, but one of the other aspects that's important to communication is, better citizenship? That doesn't seem to get talked about so much in Utah.
That's important, and we all need to be learning, always. Regardless of how educated we might be, we need to always continually be learning. And one of the initiatives that the governor is undertaking right now is ensuring that civics education and principles of the free market are taught in our schools, so that as our children come up, young men and young women come up through the K through 12 years and even in college, that their understanding of the great principles upon which this country was built, and that they're able to articulate those. We have a joke in the office that if you can't pass the citizenship test, then you shouldn't be able to work for the governor. And I've not yet administered that test to our employees, but certainly every person, regardless of their academic achievement, should be able to take that U.S. citizenship test and be able to pass it, hopefully with, if not 100%, but close to 100% proficiency.
Even if we give them a B, right? We ought to cut a little slack.
Maybe we'll cut a little bit of slack, but we're not gonna excise them from society. But I think it's important for us to know about our government and its functions and how it interacts with the people and how the people appropriately interact with the government and things of that nature.
But not just the 3 branches of government and the press is the 4th estate, but
how to be involved, how to be anxiously engaged in a good cause in the community, how to move forward a cause. I think those are important.
How not to vote for a candidate because of some smarmy 30-second political spot. I mean, media literacy skills. I mean, all these things seem to make better citizens, not just more employable.
People should be able to look at a candidate objectively and measure them based upon their merits. And I think that's some of that is self-taught, some of that is just wisdom and other things that come through life lessons.
So back to your notion earlier of economic development, how do you or the governor, I guess you can speak for him as well, how do you see Salt Lake Community College fitting into the economic development of the state, not just job creation wise, but we're a huge employer too?
Sure. Great question. One of the elements that I appreciated about my meeting with the college president, President Heftelin, was the opportunity to see that for every scientist and for every scientist that might be employed in the state, you need 2 or 3 technicians, folks that are in supporting careers. And so out at the airport campus, you've got great opportunities for expansion out there. We talk about the companies that are located out there, the Boeings and the L3s of the world, that are manufacturing airplane and defense aerospace parts. They don't need 100 PhDs out there working. What they need are people who can operate an autoclave or who can do other technical or skilled labor, and I believe that Salt Lake Community College plays a very important role in that pipeline in ensuring that these important industries in the state have a well-skilled and trained workforce to sustain those jobs.
So we've only got a couple minutes left, but can I put you on the spot in terms of the elections that are coming up? What do you see going on?
Sure. It's an important midterm election year. One of the things that I've followed closely are the House and Senate races. I think it's a great opportunity for conservatives in Congress to retain their majority. Utah is really poised to be represented well in Congress. Senator Hatch has the potential to become the next chairman of the Finance Committee. 2 of my former bosses, Congressman Rob Bishop has the opportunity to become the next chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, and Congressman Chaffetz has an opportunity to become the next chairman of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And so great opportunities for the state of Utah to be represented at the highest levels of leadership in the U.S. Congress in the 114th.
You see the Senate flipping to Republican? You think they can pull that off?
I'm not a prophet, but I do think that looking at some of the polling data that's out there, it does look good for Republican candidates.
Thanks. We're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on today.
My pleasure. This has been Community Roundtable. With us, Justin Harding, Chief of Staff for Utah Governor Gary Herbert, and thank you for joining us. If you have a comment, maybe you have a question, maybe you have a suggestion for a future show, please get in touch with us. Our email address, roundtable@slcctv.com. Roundtable@slcctv.com. Thank you again. Appreciate you being here. Justin Harding, Chief of Staff for Utah Governor Gary Herbert. Keep it tuned to SLCCTV. I'm Nick Burns.